Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a great show for you today. First, a disturbing fascination with Ted Bundy by Bryan Kohberger. No court today for Karen Reed. She's sick, but we got an update from yesterday. Testimony in the Sean Combs case, well, let's say it just gets a little freaky. We have this day in legal history and our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment below. Hit that little bell for notifications. And yes, check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get started, let me remind you to go to crimetalksearch.com. Sign up and get that background subscription service today. When you do, you can do a background search on anyone here in the United States. And when you do that search, guess what? You're going to get information regarding social media presence, their email, their phone number, whether they have a criminal history. Are they on one of those sex offender registries? Yes, think about it. For all you Crime Talk aficionados who want to do your own research about the cases that we talk about here every day or cases that interest you, guess what? You can do background searches on all of the key players in that case. And I'm telling you, most of the time, you come up with something that you just didn't expect to see. So go to crimetalksearch.com. You never know what you're going to find, but you're going to be glad that you did. All right, so let's go ahead and open the docket for Tuesday, May 13th of 2025. First, Bryan Kohberger. Fascination with Ted Bundy? Let's see. So Bryan Kohberger, obviously, the now former PhD student of criminology there at Washington State University, is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder as it relates to the deaths of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Now, there's also a count of burglary. Now, some recent reports have revealed some disturbing details about Kohberger's cell phone activity, particularly his searches for serial killer Ted Bundy and the selfies that he took resembling Ted Bundy. Now, these revelations may provide a little insight into Bryan Kohberger's state of mind and potential motivations, raising questions about his fascinations with one of America's most notorious criminals. Now, the searches reportedly by Kohberger of Ted Bundy and selfies resembling Ted Bundy are substantiated by multiple sources. These searches were documented in police reports and obviously recently reported upon. Additionally, Kohberger searched for non-consensual pornography using keywords such as passed out, drugged, and sleeping, indicating perhaps a broader pattern of concerning online activity. A selfie that reportedly shows Bryan Kohberger wearing a black hoodie resembling an image of Ted Bundy he had viewed is also a little disturbing. Supports claims of Kohberger emulating Bundy, further fueling speculation about his fascination with the now put-to-death killer. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Ted Bundy, back in the 1970s, he was a serial killer who confessed to 30 murders, primarily of young women, though the true number may be higher. Now, known for his charm and manipulative tactics, Bundy targeted college students, often breaking into residence, as seen in his 1978 Florida State University Chi Omega sorority house attack. His ability to evade capture and his psychological complexity makes his case a cornerstone in criminology studies, as noted in academic analysis of serial killer behavior. Now, at the time of the alleged crimes, Kohberger was a PhD student in criminology, obviously there at Washington State, and he earned his master's degree in criminal justice from DeSalle University. Now, he studied under Catherine Ramsland, a renowned expert on serial killers, including Bundy. Academic context suggests that Kohberger's interest in Bundy could be completely scholarly. Now, Kohberger's fascination with Ted Bundy can be analyzed through multiple lenses, combining academics, personal, and psychological factors, right? As a criminology student, Kohberger would have been exposed to Bundy's case through coursework and research, and Bundy's meticulous planning, victim selection, and evasion tactics are frequently analyzed in academic settings. Now, Kohberger's studies under Ramsland likely included such cases, providing a scholarly basis for his searches, right? And what is interesting, though, is the personal fascination and the timing. That's right. The timing of Kohberger's searches coincides with the Idaho murders, perhaps suggesting a personal interest beyond academic study. Now, the similarities between Bundy's crime and the Idaho cases, both involving college students and residential intrusions, may have drawn Kohberger's attention, as highlighted in several reports. The inclusion of non-consensual pornography searches with violent keywords further indicates a fascination with themes of power and control, aligning with Bundy's motivations, right? And then also Bundy's methods. That's right. Kohberger may have studied Bundy's operational method, such as victim selection and crime scene management, to inform his actions. Now, Kohberger may have analyzed Bundy's techniques. However, let's face it, there's differences, noting Bundy's charm versus Kohberger's social isolation, right? Now, the selfie resembling Bundy, as shown in these photographs, suggests a possible psychological identification. Kohberger may have seen parallel between himself and Bundy, both accused of targeting college students and exhibiting calculating behavior. This identification obviously remains speculative, pending further psychological evaluation. Now, some people have said that Kohberger's likely familiarity with Bundy's cases due to his academic background, but highlighted the differences. Obviously, Bryan Kohberger was not someone that is very charming. Ted Bundy actually used his charm to commit a lot of crimes. There's the fascinating parallel as both Kohberger and Bundy crossed state lines to commit murders in death penalty jurisdictions. It's also suggested that Bundy's crimes were driven by a power struggle, much more than sex, a dynamic potentially relevant to Kohberger's searches. And then we got the context as it relates to the Idaho murder cases. That's right. Now, Gonzalez, Mogan, Kernodle, and Chapin were fatally stabbed in an off-campus residence in Moscow, Idaho, like most people know. Kohberger was arrested 6 weeks after DNA evidence linked him to the knife she found at the crime scene. And his trial, now set for August 11th, 2025, before Judge Hippler, could result ultimately in the death penalty. And then we got the pool party stuff, right? Now, back in July of 2022, Kohberger attended a pool party in Moscow, Idaho, where he interacted with students, some of whom were close friends with the victims. He saved photos of female students, many in bathing suits, and exchanged contact information with a graduate student. Cell phone data indicates he made 23 trips to the Moscow area over the next 4 months, with his phone connecting to a tower near the victim's residence, suggesting possible surveillance. Then we have the online searches. In addition to the Bundy-related searches, Kohberger's cell phone records reveals that in September of 2022, searches for sociopathic traits in college students. In October of 2022, searches for pornography with keywords like drugged and forced. In October of 2022, searches for can psychopaths behave pro-socially? That was after the traffic stop. Then we have the post-murder searches for the Idaho murder and listening to Britney Spears' Criminal. Now, on the night of the murders, Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra was allegedly seen circling the victim's neighborhood, and a surviving roommate reported encountering the masked man with the bushy eyebrows. Kohberger turned off his phone by 3 a.m. and reactivated it about 4:48 a.m. By 9 a.m., he took selfies in the apartment, giving the old thumbs up gesture. Now, as Kohberger's trial approaches, obviously some of these revelations may help shape public perception and the potential jury pool. Now, the defense has suggested that his frequent trips to Moscow were due to his habit of night drives with no criminal intent, and he's challenged the admissibility of the cell phone data, which is coming in. The recent autism diagnosis was cited in an attempt to remove the death penalty, but that request was also denied as well. Now, the disturbing nature of Kohberger's searches, particularly those involving Bundy and non-consensual pornography, may amplify public interest and scrutiny indeed as it relates to Bryan Kohberger. We'll see. Maybe it's just coincidence. Like I said the other day, maybe sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, or maybe there's something much deeper to it. I don't know. I can assure you, I have some Ted Bundy searches on my cell phone of recent, but I hope that doesn't mean that I am some sort of a serial killer. I don't think so. So unless you've got more, it has limited relevance as it relates to this. And I'm not sure if the judge would even allow this in, even if it had a slight scintilla of relevance at a trial. The bottom line is the prejudicial effect may outweigh any probative value. I still think the strongest evidence in the Bryan Kohberger case is the DNA evidence. Some people can say it doesn't matter. Oh, it's touch DNA. It's his DNA. Okay, I know I can make arguments all day long. I've done those cross-examinations. You can't say how that DNA got there. Can you, sir? No, I can't, the expert will reply. So the bottom line is that that's still the strongest evidence because, like I said, your DNA is not there. My DNA is not there. The reality of it is it's his. And although the defendant never has to do anything to prove his innocence, there has to be some plausible explanation how it got there on the knife sheath under the body of Madison Mogen. Let me know in the comments what you think. Next, testimony was postponed Tuesday in the Karen Reed murder trial due to a health issue, according to the court clerk. The report is it's Karen Reed. So before what would have been the 15th day of testimony, the Massachusetts State Police trooper were in position and awaiting the arrival of the attorneys and witnesses for the usual 9 a.m. start. But just after 8:30 a.m., the court emailed everybody and said, notice to the media, quote, please be advised that the trial of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed is not taking place today due to an unavoidable circumstance. And that's from the court spokesperson. So nothing today, but let's recap what happened yesterday. On Monday, a Massachusetts State Police sergeant who was one of the primary investigators into Mr. O'Keefe's death wrapped up his testimony, which took 3 full days. Now, prosecutors were expected to call their next witness when the trial resumed today. However, like I said, unavoidable circumstances. Karen Reed, maybe the stress of trial, wearing her down, getting a cold, maybe getting the flu. Happens quite often. I know after a big trial, I usually get a cold or something just because you were so tired and worn down. I wish Karen Reed the best. We wouldn't wish illness upon anybody. Anyway, a key witness in the case against the Massachusetts woman accused of hitting her cop boyfriend with her SUV and leaving him for dead detailed on Monday how police came to suspect her in the first place. So the trooper, Yuri Birkenik, a witness for the prosecutors in the case against Karen Reed, testified that police began investigating the former fiance professor after a friend of the couple said Reed had damaged her taillight. That detail potentially ties her Lexus to the scene outside of the Canton, Massachusetts house where Mr. O'Keefe was found dead in the snow. Now, the detective said investigators also talked to first responders present at the scene back in January of 2022, who said that Reed made a bombshell admission then that said, quote, I hit him, end quote. The trooper's latest testimony gets at some of the most foundational evidence prosecutors are trying to use to convict Reed of her boyfriend's death. Now, her apparent confession and pieces of broken taillight found outside the home in Canton obviously are a big deal for the prosecution. The prosecution says Reed deliberately hit O'Keefe in a drunken rage and left him to die there, left him for dead, basically. Anyway, the detective's testimony Monday comes after the trooper had already spent 2 full days on the stand testifying about flirtatious text messages Reed was sent by Brian Higgins, an agent with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives in the months leading up to the death of John O'Keefe. Now, the trooper also testified about O'Keefe's gruesome injuries and what Reed told police after her boyfriend was found unconscious outside the home of this fellow Boston cop. Now, Reed defense attorneys launched a pretty intense cross-examination, grilling the detective about the integrity of the investigation and his former subordinate, Michael Proctor, who sent crude text messages during the case and was ultimately fired this March for unrelated reasons. Now, under questioning by the prosecution, the investigator said, again, he walked jurors through how he came to focus on Reed as a potential suspect. The detective said he first learned from a friend of a couple that Reed had damaged her taillight and went to see her vehicle for himself. He said Reed was calm, stoic, and poised when answering initial questions from the police. Now, during the investigation, the detective said the first responders told him that they heard Reed say, I hit him multiple times, further corroborating this theory. The detective again opened sealed evidence bags to show jurors O'Keefe's jeans, as well as red, black, and clear pieces of taillight found at the scene where O'Keefe was found lying there. He testified and said all the evidence, all the statements, all the digital, all the circumstantial, all the information is coupled, put together, capped off by the defendant's statement herself to form the case, he said. The detective told prosecutors he looked through phone records for evidence that Higgins, the ATF agent who exchanged flirty text messages with Reed, would have any sort of reason to murder O'Keefe, and they found none. Now, Reed's attorneys asked the detective if he found motive for Higgins to confront O'Keefe. The detective said there was a possibility Higgins could have been jealous after spotting Reed at a bar with O'Keefe, but he said he really didn't follow up on that possibility. So Reed's attorney wrapped up his questioning by raising the possibility that O'Keefe was killed in an alcohol-fueled fight and dragged across the lawn with his body, where his body was ultimately found. The detective said the stains on O'Keefe's jeans did not indicate he was dragged, but admitted he didn't take any real steps to forensically determine what the stains were. During cross-examination of the detective, Reed's attorneys played video of her SUV arriving at the Canton Police Department garage, seeming to raise the possibility that Proctor, right, his former employee, another detective, planted pieces of the taillight at the crime scene. Reed's broken taillight is a key piece of evidence supporting the prosecution's theory that Reed hit O'Keefe with her SUV and left him for dead, correct? The defense has argued, obviously, that Reed was framed and questioned whether Proctor compromised the integrity of the investigation. Throughout the detective's testimony, though the detective previously testified that neither he nor Proctor approached the vehicle right rear taillight, video showed Proctor walking around the back of the vehicle and then exiting the frame with what the detective said on the stand may have been a black portfolio in his hand. Now, Reed's attorneys asked if the video was taken before 5:45 p.m. on January 29th, 2022, when the first pieces of broken taillight were uncovered near where O'Keefe was found unconscious in the snow. The detective agreed that it was. He also agreed the scene was just a short drive from the police department. But the detective told prosecutors he and Proctor did not go to the scene. He said they remained at the police department until 6 p.m. while another team searched for evidence. The detective said video footage showed the Lexus was damaged before it arrived at the police department, and he had never seen anyone take a piece of broken taillight while it was in the garage. Now, Alan Jackson, the defense attorney, continued his cross-examination by again questioning the detective about text messages he received from Proctor during the investigation into Miss Karen Reed. The crude text messages previously read to the jury on May 8th that went most of the day. Now, in August of 2022, a trooper sent a photo of Reed's attorney, David Yannetti, to several members of the department. Proctor responded to the group text saying he was going through the phone of Yannetti's client, referring to Reed with a slur against the disabled community. No nudes so far, Proctor wrote. The detective said that although he acknowledged the message by liking it, he had never seen the term vile. Now, Jackson asked the detective why he gave Proctor such a positive performance review a few months later, writing that his subordinate handled himself and the high-profile case with the utmost professionalism and strict integrity. The detective stood by his previous testimony that the investigation was handled with integrity and honor, but said Proctor's comment about Reed was unfortunate and unprofessional. Now, the detective previously testified he lost 5 vacation days for failing to properly supervise Mr. Proctor. Flirtatious texts show Reed may have ghosted Agent Higgins. So on May 9th, the detective read aloud the jury dozens of messages between Reed and Higgins expressing mutual romantic interest and discussing Reed's deteriorating relationship with Mr. O'Keefe. Reed told Higgins she didn't want to stop talking to him, but there was no contact between them for 5 days until Higgins texted Reed after spotting her at a bar with O'Keefe on January 28th of 2022. O'Keefe was found unresponsive in the snow the next morning. Now, Reed's attorney asked the detective if he thought Reed was ghosting Higgins or abruptly cutting off all contact with any explanation. One could read into that manner the detective said. So that was an interesting line of questioning. And I get the defense, they're working with what they got. Okay, I told you the prosecution, in my humble opinion, is doing a much better job than the last time. Whether it's going to be enough to convict her, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to hear all the evidence in the case. But Mr. Brenner is doing a much better job than the previous prosecutors that tried this case. But I don't really get this, right? So Higgins somehow becomes jealous, wants to have this relationship with Reed, sees them at the bar, once again becomes jealous, kills O'Keefe, and then frames Karen Reed to do that, to get her framed for murder. Interesting plot twist indeed, but I'm not sure I see that as very plausible. Understand, we'll still have to wait and see. But remember, it's always the defendant's own words that get them. And Karen Reed has a lot of her own words. The jury will have to decide whether I hit him. Was it one time, 2, 3 times? Was that credible? Did it happen at all? The jury will have to decide that. And on top of that, her interviews that she gave with the permission of her attorney, where she said she was drunk, and she said, well, there was a possibility that I hit him. Bad facts, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, she's entitled to the presumption of innocence, but we'll see. And I think the Karen Reed can do no wrong group seems to be getting a little less loud as the trial goes on. But maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comments. Next, the Sean P. Diddy Combs case. Things are getting a little freaky on the stand. That's right. Today, Cassandra Cassie Ventura, the former girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs, delivered some powerful testimony in his federal sex trafficking trial at the courthouse there in New York City. Now, as the prosecution star witness, Ventura detailed a relationship spanning over a decade, alleging physical and psychological abuse, coerced participation in drug-fueled sex parties known as freak-offs, and extensive control over her personal and professional life. Testimony has intensified scrutiny of Mr. Combs, who obviously is on trial for the charges of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation for prostitution, to which he has pled not guilty and is entitled to that presumption of innocence. Now, Ventura, who is 38 and 8 months pregnant, recounted a pattern of violent incidents during her relationships with Mr. Combs, which began when she was just 21. Now, she testified that Combs would bash me on my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me on the head if she was down, resulting in bruises across her body. She described his demeanor shifting abruptly, noting that his eyes just go black, signaling a transformation into a different person, she testified. Now, these allegations are supported by the 2016 hotel surveillance video showing Combs assaulting Ventura, incident he later apologized for, though he denies the current charges. Now, Ventura also described psychological abuse, stating that Combs controlled her daily activities, communications, and appearances. She testified that he required her to maintain specific looks, such as white or French tip nails and a tanned complexion, and would comment on her appearance, once saying she looked too Mexican with certain hairstyles. His staff and security included individuals named as D-Rock, Bonds, Uncle Paulie, Fahim, and Malik allegedly monitored her whereabouts and enforced his directives, leaving her feeling like a little shadow with no autonomy. Now, the nature of the freak-offs, that's right, the central to her testimony, were that the freak-offs she described as being orchestrated sex parties involving drugs, multiple partners, and coercion. The events introduced by Combs when Ventura was just 22 involved hiring male escorts for her to perform sexual acts while Combs watched and sometimes recorded. Ventura testified these sessions occurred in cities such as New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Las Vegas, and as well as internationally in Spain and Turks and Caicos, often in hotels like the Trump and the Grand Mercy in Manhattan or the Beverly Hills hotel in Los Angeles. Now, she detailed how Combs' staff, including former Chief of Staff Christina Corman, Neil Dominique, and David James, arranged these events, booking rooms under aliases like Jackie Starr, Frank Black, or Frank White. The rooms were spotted with supplies such as baby oil, Astrogride lubricant and condoms, with some reports noting authorities seized over 1,000 bottles of baby oil from Combs' properties. Now, Ventura claimed she felt pressured to participate, fearing blackmail with the recorded videos, which Combs allegedly threatened to release. One notable incident involved Ventura's first freak-off in Las Vegas, where she was made to wear a masquerade mask and high-platform shoes from a sex store. She described feeling high and confused, yet believed that she was pleasing Combs. Another disturbing episode occurred when Combs abruptly left a freak-off to confront rival Suge Knight at a diner, leaving Ventura crying and fearing for her safety. Now, Ventura, who signed a 10-album deal with Combs' Bad Boy Records in 2006 at the age of 19, testified that her music career suffered significantly due to the demands of the freak-offs and the subsequent recovery periods. She recorded hundreds of songs, enough for 9 albums, but only one was released, and she received no compensation. That took a big chunk out of my life, she stated, noting that the events left no space to do anything else but to recover and to try to feel normal again. Now, the psychological toll was profound, with Ventura describing herself as naive and a total people pleaser during her early years with Combs. She recounted how he controlled her living arrangements, gifting her a New York City apartment and later moving her to Los Angeles to be near his children, despite her reluctance. Now, Combs allegedly had keys to her residence and entered at his will, further eroding her sense of any independence. Now, Ventura's testimony included several specific incidents that underscored the alleged abuse. She recalled an early encounter at her 21st birthday celebration in Las Vegas back in 2007, where Combs, then her music producer, kissed her without consent, leaving her confused and prompting her to flee the room. Later, at the Trump Hotel in Manhattan, he introduced her to oral sex, making her feel crazy for not reciprocating due to her inexperience and existing relationship at the time. Another incident involved Combs throwing a wooden hanger at Ventura's former best friend, model Carrie Morgan, in 2018, resulting in a concussion. This led to a falling out between Ventura and Morgan, and Ventura paying Morgan additional funds to resolve the dispute, as noted in her 2023 lawsuit against Combs. Now, Ventura also testified about being handed a loaded gun by Combs security while high on mushrooms at a Los Angeles club, an experience that she said left her terrified and confused. Now, this trial, which commenced on May 12th, has obviously garnered a lot of attention due to Combs' status as a hip-hop icon, and obviously the severity of the charges, which carry a potential life sentence. Now, Combs, who remains in custody because he was denied bond at previous bond detention hearings, showed little reaction during Ventura's testimony and apparently made gestures to his daughters in the gallery when they entered the courtroom. His defense team is arguing that the relationships, including the one with Ventura, was consensual, and they may call Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, to testify regarding a 2018 rape allegation. Now, Ventura's testimony delivered some visibly emotional and occasionally resting her hand on her pregnant belly has been described as riveting, with jurors closely paying attention. The prosecution plans to call additional witnesses, including other accusers, to bolster their case. Now, the trial, presided over by the judge, is expected to continue with further testimony and evidence, including potential freak-off videos, which prosecutors seek to keep sealed from the public. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, things are getting a little freaky with the P. Diddy Do It Combs case. We'll bring it to you. One day, the P. Diddy case will be in the This Day in Legal History notes. And that's what we have next for you today. This day in legal history on May 13th, 1787. Preparations for the Constitutional Convention. That's right, delegates were finalizing plans for the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, which began the next day. The resulting Constitution obviously establishing the U.S. legal framework, including federal courts and the powers of the court. And then on May 13th, 1934, the FBI and Texas authorities were closing in on Bonnie and Clyde, who were killed 10 days later. Their crime spurred the 1934 crime bill, expanding federal law enforcement powers. And then on May 13th, 1961, the Freedom Riders were arrested in Birmingham, Alabama for challenging segregated bus facilities. These arrests prompted legal battles that enforced federal desegregation laws. And on May 13th, 1966, the United States federal government took its first action against violators of desegregation guidelines of the 1964 Civil Rights Act by denying federal educational funding for 12 segregated schools and the districts in which they reside. And on this date in 1976, Congress held hearings advancing discussions of victim compensation, leading to the Victims of Crime Act of 1984. And that was also established the Victims Crime Fund, enhancing victim support in the criminal justice system. Stuff that we just take for granted today was, well, all that brand new, but not that long ago, back in 1984. That's when they were hard on crime because of the crack epidemic. Must stop crack is what they said. I think it was Senator Biden that introduced that. A large number of African-American men in prison with harsh sentences. So you could have 10 grams of crack and it would be treated as if you were, I don't know, say, for example, a white guy and you had a kilo of cocaine. They were treated the exact same way. Next on the docket, our dumb criminal of the day. Now, on the evening of April 28th of 2025, the tranquil streets of Auburn, Nebraska became the unlikely stage for an incident that could have been scripted in a galaxy far, far away. That's right. Adrian O. White, a 25-year-old man, was arrested for allegedly assaulting a 7-year-old girl and her mother with a toy lightsaber, an act that has landed him in the crosshairs with felony charges and sparked a blend of concern and, well, a little bit of amusement in the community. Now, the altercation unfolded at approximately 8:36 p.m. outside the property per the arrest affidavit filed with the county court there in Nemaha County. It's alleged that Sandra Lunsman, the mother of the young victim, reported to the sheriff's office that the neighbor approached her daughter, KL, who was playing outside, armed with what deputies later described as a high-quality device constructed of metal and thick plastic, approximately 3.5 feet in length. Now, White allegedly struck the child on the right arm, causing her to cry. And then when Lusman, the mother, confronted White, he reportedly responded with a less than Jedi-like outburst, shouting, "I'm not in the mood. Get back in your effing house," before striking her on the arm as well. Both victims sustained visible injuries, according to the arrest affidavit, noting that there was pain and a red mark on KL's arm, as well as discomfort reported by mom. Now, while not a weapon of normal causing a death or serious bodily injury, the toy lightsaber was deemed capable of causing significant pain and injury, elevating it beyond mere child's play and making it a felony. Now, Mr. White faces 2 felony charges. Child abuse, classified as a felony under Nebraska statute, and second-degree assault. These charges carry a potential penalty of up to 3 years and 7 years of imprisonment. Who would have thought the severity was so hard? Anyway, the documents reveal that White admitted to the assaults, attributing his actions to frustration over a potential rent increase linked to the victim's high thermostat setting, a grievance that apparently seems trivial in light of his response. Further complicating the case, witnesses and victims reported White's propensity for violent outbursts, including a prior incident where he allegedly chased a neighbor with an axe. The history was prompted a judicial order for a competency evaluation scheduled before White's next court appearance, which is June 3rd. He's currently being held on a $50,000 bond, which means he probably won't make it. Well, impulse control, young Aiden. Remember, the Force is with you. That's all we have, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.